is responsible for driving innovation and adoption of industry best practices while leading app support, site reliability engineering, DevOps, migration to cloud, security, and stability of all key platforms. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this Friday afternoon for, I imagine, again, an enlightening conversation. And so we'll just jump right into it. We're going to broaden our conversation, and hopefully we'll try to narrow it down to very specifics in your areas of expertise and roles within your respective organizations. And so the first question that I have for us to kick off our conversation is something very broad. With emerging technology that is unraveling in our society today and its impact on businesses and on people, what is the technology that's emerging that's getting you most excited, and why? Maybe let's start with you, Sumit.
Sure, thank you. I mean, I think I'll build a little bit on what Jeff said earlier. Like, I do think AI is probably the answer I'll give to the question, but in many ways, it's somewhere between emergence and already in large applications. Certainly at RBC, there's lots of examples of places where we are already using AI today. I mean, Nomi is a good example. Nomi is our product that helps clients understand how they're spending their money, how they might be able to save money. And it has AI algorithms that will automatically sweep your bank account and move money into savings for you. And we've saved over $1 billion of lazy savings effectively for our clients. We had a great story of a school teacher who paid for a vacation for her whole family out of money that was just being saved by an automated AI algorithm. And so whether it's in client facing or whether it's for things that'll improve our back office processes or our operations, there's many applications of AI in place today. But I think if we look out to the future, we would say almost everything at RBC will be powered by AI. It will make our best advisors even better, or it'll take our average advisors to be better as well. We don't think AI replaces humans, but we think it augments their performance and allows people to focus on the most important things by being more productive, by spending time in front of clients, not low value added work. So that's how we would see AI playing out. But I think in the short to medium term, it will be the technology that has the largest impact.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sadiq. Same thing at the National Bank, we are using AI in many applications, and for my department, for example, software engineering, we are thinking using AI to help developers to have the application to improve the quality of what we build, to be able to be predictive and maybe avoid some outbreak. And so there is a lot of possibility with AI, and I agree with you. I think it's endless.
I will take a different route since I don't want to repeat the same thing. So the question is interesting because when I hear the word exciting, I get excited. And when I get excited, I talk too much, so I'm going to try to keep myself up. So many technologies today. I will pick one out of three, but I want to mention the other two. Blockchain, which many people heard recently, just because we haven't applied so much in corporate, or it's something that is really deserve the attention. The metaverse, you just heard Facebook yesterday changed the name from Facebook to something called like Meta. Those are really, really key technologies that are going to be disruptive in any industry. So I'm going to pick something that I know a little bit, would be the cloud, primarily because it's not new. Some people won't call it emerging, but a lot of companies haven't even delivered anything in the cloud. But from my perspective, background in network and security, now in application, just the agility that the cloud brings for companies, the elasticity, which for me is scalability 2.0, because you can dial up, dial down anytime. The resiliency, leading network in the past, I was always paranoid about having A-shape, high availability, and resiliency for everything. Security, which for most instances, it had to be shared, right? You just don't throw things in the cloud and let the cloud provider provide the security. And all of those things and more, right? Performance. I always think about the concept of placing the content closer to the user. With cloud, we have that ability, right? You can, they can use like cache devices. I know we have other companies that have done that before the cloud, but they can put your content in different regions in the globe. And that content closer to the user is significant. The other thing is, before I go, it gives me the ability also when company leverage something like a colo instead of waiting a long time for, let's say, a circuit to be put on for certain thing. All of those colo have all of the different ISP, all of the different cloud provider, all of the different SaaS provider nearby, and that provides a lot of agility.
So Leonardo, I am going to repeat what you said because I was actually thinking exactly the same about cloud. I truly think that is a game changer in terms of how we deliver solutions and even deliver AI-based solutions. So I do see it foundationally as a big, as something that we can get excited about, and as a big change in terms of how we deliver, the pace at which we can deliver, and be able to enable all the solutions that we're looking to enable at the bank. And we no longer have to wait 3 months for acquisition of a server and racking and stacking in a data center, right? Like just the flexibility that we'll have in our ability to deliver faster is critical.
All right.
All great thoughts. And just to move along the conversation, I think you've all mentioned something very unique about cloud or AI implementation and its practical use cases for users. And maybe I'll just bring it back a little bit to what Sumit originally mentioned, which was, AI is meant to be augmenting. It's supposed to support. It's meant to give more human capacity to do things that AI potentially cannot do, or it has bias potentially against. And so what I want to actually pose is this interesting question around balance, which is how do each of you address this need to adopt these new technologies such as AI, and how do you prepare your teams and your organizations when it comes to talent acquisition, retention, and upskilling? Because again, AI is meant to take away redundancy and create automation and robotics to be able to help humans do some of those menial tasks. And so how do each of you address this in your own unique ways? Maybe we'll start with Yves with this question.
Yeah, but as you say, AI is automation. So for me, AI helps to solve some problems and repetitive tasks. So it's not bringing value to the organization. And with the scarcity of people right now, you need to do more with less professionals. So by implementing AI, you can do more because you automate what is not bringing value to your team, because you want them to focus on what is brand, what the brand, you need their brand to create new stuff, new product, and to be more quality to your software or to what you serve to your customers. So for me, what we are doing right now, we use AI, we identify where we can bring AI, where is the value for the organization to put AI. For example, if I say maybe I take for example monitoring. Today you have application, you serve your customer, and you have a breakdown, you have to troubleshoot to go back online quickly. But to be able to introduce, when we introduce AI in the monitoring, you can be predictive before that outbreak happens. You can see where you have some issues, fix it, and you don't impact your customer, and your employees is happy because they are not stressed, because when you have some system down, everyone is on stress. So that, for example, for me, AI could serve on that purpose. And also, for example, we use AI to be able to redirect customer when they have basic questions, instead of having everyone reaching to the call agent. And so then you can keep your call agent to focus on complex questions, so they can help your customer, they can take time to help your customer, so then you improve the user experience for your customer. And that comes with retention and other stuff. So there's a lot of possibility, but I think it's where I see the advantage of AI for the employees and for the customer.
Yeah, maybe to come to the other part of your question on how do we do it from a talent point of view, I actually think much like a technology has a life cycle, so does the way we engage with it with our talent. So when something's just emerging, like Quantum's a good example there, we have one person at RBC who's paying attention, looking at the trends. It's his dedicated job, but it's a time. One person is certainly a rounding error in the size of our teams. And then as things start to emerge, like with blockchain, we started to have a team that worked on a pilot of one use case. And so it's still one central team. And then I'd say the next stage for us is something like AI. We have a really large lab, it's called Borealis AI, where we have hundreds of practitioners, but we keep it central because we think that expertise stay in one place allows us to attract the right talent and build out that skill and share those skills and then apply it to business problems across the organization. And then when something becomes mainstream, like if I think of DevOps as a technology, now we have that distributed throughout all our development teams, and there wouldn't be one central because it's so important to every team. So we tackle the talent in sort of a right fit to the how mature the technology is as well, and how deployed it is in our organization.
Yeah. I like this question very much because I take a lot of pride on talent development. Let me just give you a little bit of history here, right? Growing up as an application developer and network engineer, I never believed in certification. I never wanted to go out for getting certified on anything. And I remember having a right group of network engineers at one point. Only one was certified to have a Cisco CCIE. And I hope he's not listening right now, but he wasn't the best. I have people in that group that had no certification that were really good. So why am I telling you this? Because one certification that I truly believe is the cloud certification. Remember, I picked cloud before. I primarily like to encourage people to go for those type of certifications. Even though I know on the trenches doing development, but I went out and I got my own AWS Solution Architect certification. It was primarily to kind of inspire and motivate my engineer to go and do it. So that's the way we are tackling it. The world is changing. There's a lot of learning that has to be done, and people need to go out and learn. You know, once again, we are living one of the best times in human history in terms of how quickly we can learn something, and that I'm approaching it from that perspective.
Wonderful, thank you, Leonardo. Anything to add to that, Jeff, before we move on?
Well, it just, I think it goes back to my earlier point in the keynote just about the solutions, right? So AI is no longer in, I would say, the early adopter stage, but how we apply it could shift to early adopter, right? So I think it's just making sure that we have the right solutions and we don't rush to deploy it in a situation that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
So, you have to develop your people internally, because sometimes you want to hire experts outside, but you have some workforce internally. And maybe what we are doing at the National Bank is we identify what is emerging profession, create a learning path, have your manager work with the team, because people want to learn, they want to have time to develop themselves. So give them the tools to do that. So
that is an excellent point. Sorry to interrupt there, but that's an excellent point. So most often people think that you need to go out and find those talents someplace else. Yeah. The best thing to do sometimes is to retool or reskill our own engineer. Because once again, some of you are talking about AI, I pick cloud, and I can tell you one thing about the cloud. The cloud for many people is something that is in the cloud, but at the end of the day, there are layer 1, layer 2 things that happen. Like what I mean by that is that there are servers, there are routers, there are switches, there are firewall, things that have been done traditionally on-prem, and those skills don't go away. You just have to retool your skills to understand how you can just leverage new things like infrastructure and code and different things to make it better in the cloud.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation. A lot of organizations tend to think about, hey, what's the best way to go to market? And of course, buying a technology or hiring a technology vendor to help you in an agile fashion, create the solution, implement it, and deploy it is one thing. But building that internal knowledge capital is important for retention, of course, and upskilling and retooling, because then you get to keep all that when it's finished, in a finished product, which is a super interesting dynamic. And again, predicament that a lot of organizations that have to make that, make that call to say, okay, am I going to buy this? Am I going to build it internally? And it's one I think that's worth considering, especially for those in the audience who are looking at a career in emerging tech, whether it's cloud-based AI or quantum. But we're going to move along with our conversation. And before that, we're going to move on to the first polling question, which is to the audience. And the first question that I'm going to ask the audience is, what is your most favorite technological innovation so far? And which do you use on a daily basis? I don't know how we're going to be able to address the answer to this question, but maybe, I guess, if something pops up, I'll talk about it here. And if we don't get any answers within the next few seconds, I'm going to move very quickly on forward. I don't. It's hard to see. There's no. It changed my vision.
We can see it now. Yeah. The Wi-Fi coffee maker.
Okay, perfect. There you go. Electric self-driving cars, cloud, mobile food ordering apps. Wonderful. Okay, let's move on to the polling. Okay, our polling question for the day is, it hasn't been talked about yet, but it's definitely one that's probably top of mind for a lot of folks, which is how much faster is 5G comparatively to 4G? And the first option is 30 times faster. The second option is 66 times faster. The third option is 100 times faster. And the fourth is 120 times faster. And I'll give the audience again maybe 30 seconds to guess which of these are the right answers. Well, it seems to be jumping back and forth a little bit here. Pretty close. I think majority of audience got this answer. So at 26 responses, 100 times faster, 33% of respondents said 100 times faster, and that is correct. Actually, 5G is 100 times faster than 4G, so that is correct. Majority of you got it right. So congratulations, give yourself a pat on the back. And with that, let's move on to our next topic and conversation, which Sumit prefaced and mentioned a little bit earlier, which is about quantum. And this is actually a technology that's emerging and becoming quite the talk of the town. The Ministry of Innovation, Science and Economic Development of Canada recently held a public consultation on developing a national quantum strategy for Canada. There are two notable associations that come to mind in Canada, for me at least. That is Quantum Industry of Canada and Quantum Algorithms Institute in BC, which have some significant investments and companies involved. And so from your viewpoint, tell us a little bit about what impact quantum will have in products and services in our industry as a whole. And maybe we'll start with you, Sumit, again.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, in my view at least, quantum, and I would not profess to be the expert on quantum, it's still really early days. I mean, the computers are incredibly expensive. The processing power isn't yet at a place where it is really better than the largest computing power we'd have. But I think it's that promise of what the future will be in terms of, I think certain types of statistical and machine learning problems will be better served by quantum computers. Also, cryptography. I mean, that's probably the hottest topic around quantum. Are our current methods of cryptography going to be protect us still in a world where they're being attacked by quantum computers, as you referenced, AI attacking models at the start? So I'd say right now we're watching those trends, we're educating ourselves, but we don't have a quantum computer in our data centers at RBC today. It's still pretty early days in my view.
Oh, I can just the board one.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like, it's early days. We have an innovation team that would look at opportunities like this, but we're not running anything from a quantum perspective at this point. And I'll just bring it back to the solutions, right? Like, what solutions are we going to be able to develop leveraging quantum computing? What is the impact it's going to have on cybersecurity, both from a defensive as well as a criminal element standpoint, right? So a lot of things still to be worked out, but it's certainly by no means mainstream in our organizations at this point.
Yeah. When I think about quantum, I automatically think about James Bond, Austin Powers, who else? Mission Impossible. I'm gonna take the contrarian view here, primarily because it is such a powerful technology. What will happen when the wrong people get to know it and leverage? So, for instance, cryptography, like, is quantum a threat to cryptography? Can a quantum solution bypass some of the things that we have been developing for the last 30 years? And the one that really scared me more is I've been hearing some story about the possibility of quantum being able to bridge the immutability of the blockchain. If that happened, I will lose a lot of money. A lot of people will lose a lot of money. So from that perspective, that's what I see it as something that it is powerful. It is a threat too at the same time. What is it? The Spider-Man movie with great power comes great responsibility. So we have to be careful with that technology. But I love it anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I think Summit's right. It's experimental right now. We did some proof of concept at National Bank to see, to understand the technology, to see maybe we try to use it to maybe for financial risk analysis. But just a proof of concept, we don't have something in production, but we are watching it and see maybe we could find some use cases that worth the investment on that.
Yeah, I think we always talk about these emerging technologies in isolation and by itself. What's going to be unique and interesting for every organization to keep an eye on is the combination of that with AI when it comes to attack vectors. I think that's going to be very interesting for us to all keep an eye on, just to make sure that we have mechanisms in place to hopefully defend against those things, as you all have mentioned already. Let's change gears slightly. We have just a few minutes left, but let's talk a little bit about IoT. Now, we've seen how a lot of people have become increasingly connected or glued to their devices and technology. And for me, I have literally over 10 devices connected already in my household. The world of IoT is expanding, and with the average Canadian household having about more than 10 connected devices, that's a lot of devices capturing data about you, about your purchases, your habits, your behaviors. And it's estimated that by the end of 2021, there will be over 46 billion connected devices in the world. And by 2030, that number is projected to be 125 billion. By 2022, Google will have the largest market share of IoT devices at 48%. And these are really interesting and large numbers when you look at the growth year over year. And so what will the world look like in 2030 with all these connected devices? And Leonardo, you've done some work with this at Sunlight. Can you share your experience a little bit within IoT and maybe if 5G has any bearing on the IoT experience in the future?
Yeah, I can give you more about 5G, but let me give you some of what I know about IoT. Primarily, the industry that I am now is not too crazy about IoT, but manufacturing and people's life has been changed by IoT. First thing that comes to mind is automation, right? Things like automation, cloud, analytics, cybersecurity, post-pandemic. Those things come to mind when I hear IoT. Experiences, use cases, what I used it before in the past was primarily for facility, time, elevators, sprinkler, all of those things to help out the security system to manage everything. One thing that we have to be careful again, I'm pretty paranoid with risk management. The security of these devices, too many of them, you just mentioned it. In the past, it was only people with computer or most recently with iPhone connecting to the internet. Now with this explosion of IoT devices, we have to be careful because it has become one of the primary targets for attack surface or hacker. That's one thing. So every time that we deploy anything with IoT, we put it in a separate network, separate from production for many reasons. There are too many of them. A lot of these companies developing these devices are like reaching to speed to market. Sometimes they cut corners and they leave something behind. On the personal space, people with TVs, people with the Nest monitor or thermometers, all that stuff, they sometimes forget to change the original password. So it's really easy to attack. I also recommend for those people listening now, if we have any of these devices, which we ought to, try to put those devices on the guest network on your firewall. So if they get breached, you don't get into any trouble. I have experience in property and casualty, and I think the ultimate IoT device is a drone, right? With sensors and everything. It was a really good deployment, like I mentioned before, separate from the network and making sure that, there's no connectivity between production and the IoT network. Now, on the concept of 5G, I can give you more, and it's a little bit unrelated to IoT. But for instance, in the past, property casualty, whenever there was catastrophe, a Hurricane Sandy, or tornado, we had to reach out to those places and help out people. Typically, connectivity was down. Now with 5G, provide the bandwidth that most companies can use to set up a satellite type of office really quickly and help out people filing out claims.
Maybe the one other area I would talk about is I think we think payments will be an area that really gets changed quite dramatically by IoT. That these embedded devices will, I mean, the example of the refrigerator that's going to order milk for you, I feel like has been around for far too long, and no one I know has a refrigerator like that. But I think we will start to see payments embedded in a lot more devices and a lot more opportunities for small payments or for a tailored payment for a specific purpose. And we'll start to see that, and that's an area that we're starting to explore on how will payments and IoT devices work together.
Yeah, I always imagine going in my car and then going through a drive-through and then just going across a couple of sensors. They know who I am. They know what my order is at Starbucks, and then boom, I just pick up my order and I'm good to go. I think that's a technology and a use case that I'd probably buy into if I were ever to, really expand upon and leverage the usage of any IoT device. Just given my early adopter kind of mindset.
Which, from a privacy, once again, cybersecurity perspective, we have to be really cautious with all of that information flowing.
Yeah.
From a cybersecurity perspective, I like to add too, like one of the things that really scare most people is DDoS, distributed denial of service attack. Now with all of these devices, it will be really easy to crumble any network.
Yeah, absolutely. And with all these different attack surfaces, like you mentioned, it's really difficult to manage all those different devices. We only have about 2 minutes left, and so I'll just move on to our final question for each of you. It's been a great opportunity to get all your insights today. I know our time was short, so thank you again for participating. And maybe to close up our session, if you had to leave some practical advice for those in the audience that are exploring a career in emerging tech, what wisdom would you impart with them today? And maybe we'll start with you, Jeff.
I hate to be repetitive, but it's learn the foundational technologies and understand the solution and the opportunities that those technologies bring. Because that's what we need. We need the solutions that can be enabled by the disruptive or emerging technologies.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can go in order here. I think, first of all, I totally agree with what Jeff said. I think foundations are really important. So I think getting to know these technologies, however that is, whether that's on the internet, is important. But I equally think, we really think a lot about rotation of talent at RBC. How do I get somebody who knows the digital areas I work in, but also knows cyber and also knows our core systems and really large scale transaction processing? And so I think if you're early in your career, trying to get multiple experiences, not trying to become an expert in one thing too soon, because that horizontal thinkers, those sort of wide thinkers are our strongest leaders in my view. And so really getting a broad set of experiences as well, including emerging technologies, would be my advice.
Great. And I would say maybe quickly continue to invest in yourself, in learning, because technology is moving fast. You have to keep up. Learn, read, and yeah.
Just to tap out to that, be selfish. Be selfish about yourself, about your wellness. Be happy. There's too many things to learn out there. Just don't think that you have to know everything. Pick one thing. I recommend one. Blockchain. If you're so concerned talking about mainnet, layer 1, layer 2, Oracle, change it. But be selfish about you. Be happy and just learn and keep learning.
Thank you very much, everybody. And again, thank you to Sumit, Leonardo, Jeff, and Yves for your insights. And it was a really great conversation in the 30 minutes that we've had. And I guess the key takeaway here is for the members of the audience is be a partaker and learner throughout your life, your career, and then those opportunities will present itself if you're just open to that learning experience, whatever technology you choose to go in towards. So thank you again for the Black Professional Tech Network and for our panelists again for joining us. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and your weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, panelists, for such an engaging session. BPTN. We will now pause for a break and resume shortly.